Greetings, I am Jen Hersh, one of the corrective exercise specialists here at Crossroads Chiropractic and Wellness, and I wanted to make a video about some of my travel tips. It is currently almost Christmas time around here when this video is recorded, and it really kind of inspired me to talk about some of the things I've learned about traveling with chronic pain and traveling with injuries through the years and through different experiences with clients. So take away from this whatever you need to from the video, depending on the severity of your chronic pain, or if you're just kind of wanting to stay ahead of tightness and inflammation in your travels as well. Just basically trying to, it's always easier to stay ahead of the pain than it is to try to catch up afterwards. So some of the main concerns with traveling with the holiday season is always going to be dehydration and inflammation. Right? Those are two things that really can lead to, no matter what conditions you have, or even just feeling good in general, can quickly essentially cause some issues or cause some pain. So the first thing I'd always like to encourage people is, if you're in a place where it makes sense medically for you to drink electrolytes. Like, drink your electrolytes daily, right? Most people, unless they have some underlying medical condition, could use some electrolytes in their daily life. This will help, especially during travel, for you to use the water that you are not getting enough of already more effectively. Make sure that you're sticking with that hydration, even on road trips, right? It basically allow more time for bathroom breaks, allow more time for whatever you need to, but dehydration is one of the leading causes of essentially inflammation and lockdown of fascia and soft tissue in our system. Then if we look at inflammation in general during travel and during holiday seasons, we're also looking at eating foods that our bodies are not used to. So one of the things that I encourage people to do is, throughout any holiday season, whether that's, summer, winter, whatever, to remember that the holidays are generally 1 or 2 days, right? There may be a lot of Christmas parties or a lot of, different events around, but be a little choosy on which days you choose to splurge. Sure, splurge on the holiday, but don't make the whole trip necessarily that. Try to, when at all possible, eat low inflammatory foods or travel with low inflammatory snacks. That way you can choose when your inflammation hits, instead of it just being a whole week-long session, if that makes sense. Some of my favorite go-tos, I don't have any here today, I wish I could show you. There's some of those like squeeze packets of fruit and vegetables. That's a great way to kind of take those to travel. There's all kinds of different really well-balanced protein bars. I don't want to promote any specific products because different dietary restrictions. You could even do low sodium beef jerky, things like this, to make sure we're focusing on protein and low inflammatories. So make sure you're choosing your snacks well while traveling, and then that way you're also not stuck having to try to find food while you're out, even if it's those little peanut butter packets, right? As long as we're thinking ahead about our meals and thinking ahead about what is our food going to look like during the holidays and during travel, fantastic. Now, when it comes to mobility and essentially a little bit more corrective exercise, right, there's several things that you can take with you in any scale that you want when you're traveling. One of my go-tos is I always travel with a roller. I travel with a roller for a couple of different reasons. One, it's hollow, at least the ones that we have here are. So that means I could put a lot of my therapy tools in here, and this is essentially all I need, right? So I'm going to do the Crossroads rep bag here, but you could essentially do any sort of container that this fits into, right? So I'll throw this in here. Then for me personally, I always take some bands with me, because if I'm stuck at the airport on layovers, or if we're stuck on essentially, some sort of everyone's, making a pit stop on a road trip, what I can go through and do is I can do some of my mid-back activations to help with neck pain, right? To help essentially get blood flow to some of that supportive tissue in between, using those opportunities as well to go through and do my wall stretches at a gas station, do my wall stretches in the airport. If you have any questions, any of the videos that need bands, you can actually refer back to our YouTube channel as well for some of those mid-back activations, some of those nice neck pulls, and some of the wall stretches. All of those can be applied at the airport or a gas station, right? So I'll throw those in here as well. Now, for a lot of people who are wanting essentially some help stretching, right? Not only is your band's really good for that mid-back activation, these longer ones, but then I can also use these as stretch help, right? So if I'm back here and I'm needing to kind of help pull my shoulder for a stretch, right? Or if I'm needing to get my shoulders opened up again, preferably watch your surroundings and don't hit your hand on stuff, right? This is something else that I like to throw in here as well, whatever versions you need, right? Just like so. You can take your lacrosse ball, you can throw that in here. What's nice about that lacrosse ball is you can also use it in the car. So what I'll do is I'll put it right here on my back, sometimes in the car, or right here up in my shoulders, and get a little myofascial release, especially if I'm not driving, or even in the airplane. I can do my figure 4 releases right here, trying to stay ahead of some of that hip tightness while flying and traveling. Once again, using this on the wall at an airport in between flights or beforehand, because we all know we're waiting around once we get through dropping our luggage off, right? These are great ways to use a few minutes here and there when you're normally just scrolling on your phone to essentially go through and start working on your mobility and staying ahead of tightness. So I'll even throw that in here, right? Another one of my favorite things to use as well, that lacrosse ball is just not going to stick with me today, it keeps falling off. Another thing that I like to travel with or to use before and after is one of our decompression pillows, right? So if you're going to be on a really, really long flight or you're the passenger in a road trip, these work at an inclined position, right? So what this does is 5 to 10 minutes at a time, depending on what setting you're on, this is a great way to stretch the neck, because if we're here all the time, right, we need to come back, need to get some of that nice natural stretch back to the neck. This is something that could be done at home, even just leading up to holidays preventatively. So if I know that I'm going to have a lot of travel, or I know if I'm going to be eating a lot of inflammatory foods that I'm not used to, just because of some previous conditions for me, the week before and the week after a big event, I'll just use this more regularly to try to stay ahead of it. So it really depends on whether or not you have like room for it in your bag or not. Some people sleep on this. I don't personally recommend it, but according to the instructions of the manufacturer, there are ways to do that safely. So it really depends on you. Once again, if you have any questions about any of this, you can always ask us here in office. But this is something else real quick you can throw in here, once again, or just have in the car with you, right? Last and not least, or I guess not technically last, I almost forgot about this. So when you're traveling, right, if you're in a car, it's a lot easier to apply one of these. When we're thinking about how we sit in various vehicles, what we want to think about is kind of that more neutral spine, right? And for a lot of people, their seats are not designed and we're just kind of like tucked in here, right, on these road trips. So if I'm able to get my pelvis to neutral by whether it's like sitting on some sort of donut or sitting on like a little cushion there if need be, this depends on the car, right? And then having some kind of lumbar support here to put me in neutral, my shoulders are just going to sit back more naturally anyways. That's going to take pressure off my neck. That's going to take pressure off of my low back. Keeping one of these in your car regularly, even if you drive for a living, is a really helpful way to take some of that pressure off of neck and shoulders. This works for office chairs as well, right? But these are some little strategies that you can have for road trips, period. I have a couple of my clients that fly with theirs, right? So it really depends on what you want to pack or not pack. But this essentially could fit in the same bag, right? A lot of my people have a carry-on that is just some mobility stuff to help them. Depends on how much you're traveling with, but it's a pretty good investment if you're gonna be gone for more than a couple days, even, or if you have a lot of anxiety or tightness around flying itself. Last and not least is one of these pure weight devices, right? So what's handy about one of these pure weight devices is this actually fits really nicely inside the roller, even with the bands. So I have a whole kit here that's just one bag that is even enough for me to handle basically any sort of flare-up that might happen while I'm on a trip. Now, what I find really, really helpful about applying this percussion device is that, once again, if you're not driving, right, or if you're on a plane or an airport, I'll use this in the airport beforehand to work on hydrating and oxygenating some of the things that lock up on me before I fly. So hips, quads, really biceps, especially the traps, just because we tend to be hunkered in here, whether you're in the plane or in the car, right? So this is another great device that you can then use pre-travel, mid-travel, or once you get to your hotel room afterwards. But having it with you in a small kit like this, if I take out like even just this pillow right here, it all just fits in, takes up almost no space. This is an entire therapy kit within the foam roller. This could easily fit inside your suitcase. This could even fit inside a backpack. I can attest to that because I fly with them all the time. So these are some of our tips and tricks essentially and go-tos for travel. Any of the products that I recommended, I don't recommend specifically one lumbar pillow or one tailbone pillow because it's going to depend essentially on the setup of your car and the setup of you, right? So try it. Don't feel like you're too attached to one or the other. The cervical pillows we do offer here in-house, and I can show you how to use those. The rollers, the Pure Wave device as well. just because I've gone through and I've essentially field tested all of this myself through my chronic injuries and with clients. So those are hopefully some little tips and strategies, or even if you never even thought about taking those things with you when you travel, doesn't take up any space at all, no more so than, a rolled up pair of jeans almost. And you can go through and really stay ahead of that. And also being intentional with your trip, using that downtime, using those little breaks, right? Schedule in a little bit more time when you get to the hotel room after a flight, or when you get to your family's house. Basically, being intentional with your self-care through this season will help you keep from getting set back as well. Because yes, we should be enjoying the holidays. Yes, we should be having these fun foods. But if we're just a little bit more intentional with it, we won't have as much to make up for after a trip, make up for after a holiday season, and we can help keep you on track through all of that.